Zerfa, welcome to the show. Welcome to CricChat powered by Umar Sheikh. A big tournament, it's happening. A lot of people have reached out to me and asked, hey, what is the format? What is happening? Who's playing? Yes, slowly we are getting some updates from the league, but there's a lot to uncover still. So, which is why I reached out and we just want to know what are some of the details. Tell us about Smash and Grab 2026.
Of course, thanks for having me, Samir. I know we're doing this virtually, but essentially, Smash and Grab is our marquee tournament that we hold every year, as C and DCL. We obviously have our league games, and that kind of goes on throughout the season. But this is an opportunity to incentivize some of the people that are passionate out there in our community about putting together a really strong team, wanting to see some of the best players in the country coming out to Calgary and playing for us. So that's kind of our structure, incentivized with some winning prize as well for the teams. So in our mind, this is kind of the marquee tournament in Calgary where we try to have the best players come out all across North America at this point, where some of the previous years, and we've had American players, Caribbean players. We've had some, Sohail Tanvir came to our tournament a couple of years ago, so that was really exciting. So just seeing, these marquee names in the city is great, and it gives our local players an opportunity as well to actually aspire to be at that level. You know how, for example, like a Canadian national player, how they warm up for a game, and it's just little things like that. And seeing the caliber they're at, it gives perspective and aspiration to our local players as well. And I think it's great for the people that are passionate about putting together the strong teams, and the local players that are looking to develop their game and be better and be the as best as they can be.
No, 100%. No, last year I remember the tournament was bigger than ever. We had a really good turnout of a large number of really amazing players. We got lots of crowds as well, despite being the weather was a little off for the last day. I remember as finals, it was very rainy.
Yeah.
Got lucky and we still had a really good tournament. The only game, unfortunately, got washed out in the whole tournament was the exhibition game for the women this year. And we have something scheduled for women as well. So that's great to see. What's new this year compared to last year?
I think we're always trying to improve the tournament in terms of the caliber that we're playing at. At least there's no specific things that we've implemented this year that I'd say is new, but it's always great to see some new teams coming into the picture, and the clubs putting in teams. So I think we, for the first time in the history of our tournament. Um, we've got a team from Northwestern BC, from Prince George. We've got, Shaheen, our local club that's kind of, really grown in the last couple of years, and they've put in a team and they're competing. And it's kind of great to see that, internally and externally, we're seeing that growth. We're seeing, new people come into the scene and really put together some good teams that are fun to watch. you know, Shaheen's team, from the squad that I've seen, a lot of local players, and they put up a good fight in their first game, and you know, you're always cheering for the local guys. So I wish to see them do really well, but that's kind of the things that we look forward to every single year. It's always someone new that puts in a strong team, and puts together a great team that's fun to watch. And it's that passion, again, I go back to it, it's that passion that we really focus on and we enjoy within our tournaments.
Absolutely. And now a couple of people have reached out to me directly, and there were other questions that came through. Uh, they want to know what is the format because not a lot of people know. There's 8 teams, so how is this going to go?
Yeah, so we've got 8 teams in groups of four. So there's two groups. We're playing in a T20 format, and top two teams from each of the groups will advance to a semifinal, playing across the groups, and then a final. Everybody that's watching this, hopefully you guys come out for the finals day, which is on Monday. We've got the semifinal scheduled for 10 a.m. at Westwinds in Martindale, and the final to be at 4 p.m. at the Martindale Cricket Ground. So we would love to see a crowd like there was last year, and that's what kind of makes these games more enjoyable for us.
So all the games are in Northeast this year, or are we seeing any changes with like other fields that are available, or what's happening there?
Yeah, no, our games are mostly, or all of the games are in the Northeast. That's where we've seen from based on our experience that attracts the best crowd for us in terms of the spectators that are there to enjoy the games. So, this is obvious, like we obviously focus on, the best quality of grounds, but then another aspect that we focus on is the spectators and people who are going to enjoy the tournament. And, who are we putting the tournament on for? And that's kind of the consideration we had in keeping the games in the Northeast where, the cricket fans tend to be more focused.
Yeah, 100%. Now, obviously, at the time when Smash and Grab is being organized, as far as I know, uh, we didn't have an idea that Team Canada is going to have a tour. Obviously, that affected the tournament quite a bit. Can you talk
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, so this is a busy weekend in terms of other large cricketing events happening across Canada, whether it's just the Canada Tour or some of the playoffs happening in Edmonton, a tournament happening in Ontario. But we've always historically had our tournament on the same weekend, and obviously it's affected that, people's availability is affected. Um, but we're still putting on a great tournament. There's players from outside of Calgary across, Western Canada, still in the tournament. So, some players from Toronto, some players from Vancouver, Edmonton, we've got a diverse bunch here. So we try to do our best in terms of the situation that we're in. We can't change Cricket Canada's tour, right? So it's kind of the situation or the hand that you're dealt, and you gotta just go on with it and deal with it.
No, obviously, with being a busy weekend across the country, that also affects the tournament. Okay, so now can you tell me? Obviously, last year we had big names from Cricket Canada, Cricket US, to name a few. We had Shubham and we had Kaleem Sana. Obviously, our local hero Hamza Tariq is still part of the tournament this year, and last year he had a big impact as well. So, can you tell me who are some of the players that were uh, that really are gonna hit it?
Yeah, like, we talk about Canada's tour just recently, but we've still got, Ravindra Pal Singh, Navneet Dhaliwal in the tournament who were, recently in Canada's team for the World Cup in India. And they recently retired. They're still here at the tournament. So those are great players to watch out for, people who have experienced, the biggest matches as far as they go for Team Canada. So those players are there. Obviously, Hamza Tariq is there, who's everybody's familiar with him in Calgary. But something that's been really impressive to me is some of the local players are just as influential within the games. Like you see within the Kings game just recently finished, Shazib came out and hit three sixes and three balls, and that's wonderful to see. Harkita had a great finish to the innings, who's a local boy. So it's also great to see those players, right? Your local players and your Calgary native players that are really coming into their own as these tournaments happen, and this is the time to impress. The people that are watching out for the higher levels. So I'd say that, someone else that I was really impressed with was Ajivir Handal in Calgary Super Kings. I think he's 19 or 20 from what I've been told. He played for Canada under 19, played two great innings, took a great catch, fast bowler. He does everything at this point. But it's impressive to see the quality that we still have within Calgary. The players are, you know, able to play at the level that, some of the national stars are playing at, and, be able to sit in the same locker room or the dressing room as them, and, be in the same team that, you're contributing to winning. That's the great thing to see.
No, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Ajay. He hasn't just scored in smash and grab or taken wickets here, but he's a big name in BC. Obviously, we had big challenges with Cricket Canada's issues, but what were the main challenges hosting the tournament this year?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge has obviously been regarding, player availability. Like we heard many times that, someone wants to put in a team into this tournament, but, maybe they wanted some of the Canadian players or maybe their players are going to play Key D20 in Ontario. So, that like that kind of side of it has been a challenge in terms of, getting together the teams based off of our success last year. We I think we underestimated or maybe took for granted in terms of, the quality of tournament that we had. So that's been a big challenge. But the other things I'd say are smaller issues. Getting through. Gotta drop off water. Gotta get the tents in place. Gotta figure out the umpires, balls at the ground. It's those little things that really start to add up. Where logistically you really have to be on top of it to ensure that the tournament goes smoothly, right? And be able to problem solve in the moment is another important factor here, right? Like a team has a problem, someone's missing a bib, someone doesn't have water, so it's going through those little issues as you go along within the tournament that arise. Last year, as you'd seen, the rain, we spent about 2 hours before the game, getting the ground ready. So thankfully we don't have any of that, but a lot of preparation goes into it, that all the logistics are working properly to have a smooth tournament.
Yeah. Okay. Lastly, I did kind of ask this to Sabil when he was on the show that we had a big turnout of fans last year. Now, what are some of the things that you would be doing to ensure that the fans turn up again for this year's tournament?
We've got obviously, I think one of the biggest thing that attracts fans is the quality of cricket that's being played, and I think there is still teams that are worth watching within this tournament. Um, there's big names here. There's good teams to watch. So I think whatever final we end up having will be a great final for the fans. But relatedly, some of our sponsors set up tents that have snacks or refreshments that are available to our fans. We focused on having our final at Martindale this year because of the fans, because we want to attract the biggest crowds for the convenience factor for everybody that's coming out. So we're looking out for those things in terms of what's there for the fans, and it's just the quality of cricket. We hope that we can have some of the best games in Calgary that happen across the year, and that's what people come out to watch, and bring their families out, bring the kids out. So the whether they have an interest for getting into cricket, that's something that that incentivizes them to aspire to be the best they can be.